Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're calling in from. My name is Emily Hirata, and I am the chair of ADRA's Health Technical Learning Lab. I am based at ADRA International in the United States and will be today's moderator. We would like to welcome you to our webinar on NextGen Celebrations, a toolkit for youth-centered NCD programming. We are joined by 5 distinguished guests today: Weanne Estrada-Magbanua, Dr. Orgilzul Batsukh, Dr. Monita Baba-Djara, Dr. Zeno Charles-Marcel, and Dr. Josue Orellana. Our main speaker, Weanne Estrada-Magbanua, joins us from ADRA International, where she is the mental health specialist. She currently supports the NextGen Celebrations Mongolia project in a technical advisor role. Today, she will be bringing us an overview of the NextGen Celebrations program and introduce its corresponding toolkit to us. We will also be receiving special remarks from some other lovely guests here with us as well. Dr. Batsukh joins us from ADRA Mongolia as the project manager of the NextGen Celebrations Mongolia pilot project. She will be sharing some brief remarks on her experience implementing the program in Mongolia. Dr. Baba-Djara is Program Director of Global Health at Loma University School of Public Health, which is the Mongolia pilot's research partner. She currently is leading this research component and will share a few words with us about that. Dr. Charles-Marcel is Director of Health Ministries at the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, through which the celebrations principles were created. He will be sharing with us a few of his own thoughts on the impact operationalizing these celebrations principles could have on a global scale. Last but not least, we have Dr. Orellana, Director for Health, Nutrition, and WASH at ADRA International. Dr. Orellana serves as the Program Manager for the NextGen Celebrations Mongolia pilot program and will provide us with a final call to action. Now, just a few housekeeping items to keep in mind. This webinar is being recorded. If you are not comfortable with this, you may disconnect now and are welcome to view the recording at a later time on our ADRA TLL YouTube site. All mics should be muted except for those that are presenting. However, if you have any questions, which we do encourage, please feel free to post them in the chat, and we will try to get to them later on during the Q&A portion of today's webinar. Now, to get us started, we have a small interactive activity. Let's see if I can get this going. You will see a poll with a single question on your screen. And what we would like you to do is simply type in your answer. And that question is, what is the first word you think of when you think of youth? There are no wrong answers here. We just want to know what comes to mind when you think of youth. So please type in your answer, and we'll just give it a minute or two to see what you, as our group of participants, thinks. All right, we're already getting some answers in. Bright, energy, future, loud, powerful, wonderful. I see some answers coming in the chat as well. Please post them in the poll if you can so we can see. Wonderful. Strength, innovative, free, risk takers, lively. Energetic and energy are the most common answers we're seeing so far. Great, bright, idealistic. Wonderful. Feel free to keep posting your answers here, but we're going to move us on. This is very, very helpful. This gives us an idea of what you as our participants think of youth. Thank you so much for your participation. This gives us a great basis to start our presentation. On your end as a participant, you can go ahead and exit the poll if you like by clicking in the X on the top right-hand corner. With that, I will turn it over to our main speaker, Weanne Estrada-Magbanua. Weanne, the time is yours.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for joining us here today. We are very happy to have you here. So before I fully delve into NextGen and the toolkit, I want to start with a question that comes up very often, and that is, why youth? Aren't NCDs like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, diseases that mostly affect older people? Well, it's a fair question, but the reality is that NCDs affect children and adolescents more than we realize. Let me share a few quick facts. From UNICEF, they say that 1.2 million children and adolescents under 20 years old die from untreated NCDs each year. But beyond the number of people currently living with NCDs, let us also talk about when these NCDs begin or when they become rooted. The behaviors that lead to NCDs, such as cigarette smoking, unhealthy diets, alcohol consumption, sedentary lifestyles, often begin in childhood or in adolescence. Now, all of these activities, these behaviors are modifiable, but if they become habits early on, they really affect a person's lifelong health trajectory. At the same time, we're also seeing that youth today are growing up in environments that make it more difficult for them to make healthy choices. We're seeing rising screen time leading to sedentary lifestyles. We're seeing aggressive marketing of fast food, junk food, sugary drinks, alcohol, nicotine to youth and children. And we're also seeing fewer safe spaces for physical activity and mental health. So as you can see, if we wait until adulthood to address NCDs, we're going to miss a very critical window. Prevention has to start earlier. And just looking at your responses on what you think about you, they were all very powerful, energetic, bright, loud, the future. This really gives us hope about what we can do if we harness this energy early on and use it for NCD prevention. And so this is what brings us to NextGen Celebrations. So what is NextGen Celebrations? NextGen Celebrations is ADRA's approach to NCD prevention in youth and with youth. At the heart of this approach is the Celebrations program, which is a lifestyle model developed by the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists Health Ministries Department. Each letter in the Celebrations acronym stands for a health principle, and altogether this gives us a holistic picture of health. Let's go through the acronym together for those of you who might not be familiar with it. So C stands for choices, or making intentional choices and decisions to promote health. E stands for exercise, or being physically active through regular movement. L stands for liquids, or drinking 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. E stands for environment, or caring for the spaces around us and also avoiding harmful exposures. B stands for belief, or finding faith, meaning, and purpose in life. R stands for rest, or getting adequate sleep and time for recovery. A stands for air, or breathing in clean, fresh air and spending time outdoors. T stands for temperance, or avoiding harmful substances such as alcohol, nicotine, and dangerous drugs. I stands for integrity, or aligning our actions with our values. O stands for optimism, or maintaining positive outlook, gratitude, and hope. N stands for nutrition, or fueling our bodies with wholesome, nutritious food. And last but not least, social support for S. We're also building strong, supportive relationships with others and those in our community. So all of these principles are based in both faith and science, and they remind us that health is not just physical, right? It's also emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's social. And so this brings us to NextGen. NextGen Celebrations is the application of the Celebrations acronym for youth. But before I give you the details of what NextGen is, I first want to tell you what it is not. Some of you may have come to the webinar expecting a fully laid out program curriculum that you can begin implementing tomorrow. But NextGen Celebrations is very intentionally not that. Why? Well, because in NextGen, we recognize that all communities are different. The NCD risks facing youth in rural Zambia will be different from the NCD risks faced by youth in urban Mongolia. And some groups might have access to gyms or green spaces, some groups will not. And so we recognize that. And instead of providing you with a strict program that you have to follow, what we offer instead is a flexible approach that will allow you to develop your own youth-centered NCD prevention program that is very specific to your setting, your context, your youth, and your goals. So let's get into this. What is NextGen? So NextGen Celebrations is a program that follows these key principles. One, it must promote at least 3 of the celebration's health principles that I had shared earlier. So for example, if you're in an area where, let's say, obesity and diabetes are quite high, maybe you'll choose to focus on nutrition, exercise, and liquids. Or if you're in an area where mental health challenges are rampant among youth, maybe you'll focus on social support, optimism, and temperance. That decision is up to you, and I'll share later what tool you can use to make that decision. Another question is why 3? Why 3 celebrations health principles? We chose 3, at least 3, because we recognize that health doesn't happen in silos, right? We want to address health behaviors across different aspects and different angles to make that health behavior more entrenched and more effective. The second principle of NextGen Celebrations is that it puts youth in the lead. And how do we do this? NextGen uses a cohort of trained youth that we call youth ambassadors to lead the program and co-create the intervention. We also use a process called human-centered design to really understand what youth need and what they want. So human-centered design, or HCD, is a creative approach where instead of coming into a community with a prefixed list of interventions, instead implementers come in and ask the youth, what are your experiences? Tell us what you want. Tell us what you need. And so in NextGen Celebrations, we do this through a process we do this through human-centered design workshops, which is a structured process that will allow you to invite youth to share their experiences and generate their ideas for activities that they think will be most helpful and will be most attractive to them. And why is this important? I wanted to emphasize this by giving you an example of what a health promotion program would look like without HCD versus what a NextGen Celebrations program with HCD would look like. So let's say there's a team that doesn't do HCD. They decide to run a session on the exercise principle by organizing a morning aerobics class for the whole school, not knowing that most students have long commutes and arrive just before class. This is not going to be very effective because 1, students are going to be coming late, they won't be able to attend the activity, or 2, even if you decide to require attendance, the students will view it as a burden and then they'll begin looking at exercise negatively. On the flip side, in NextGen, because we conduct an HCD workshop where youth are asked about their daily routines and barriers to movement, implementers are able to find out that in addition to the long commutes, many students also do not feel comfortable exercising in front of a lot of people. The youth suggest that why don't we just do a student-led aerobics break after second period when all the students have come in and when they're still feeling energetic, and let's do it in our own classrooms and not with the whole school. This approach, this activity is more likely to be more effective because it took into account the youth's preferences, their scheduling, and what they say. And so this is something that's really valuable in NextGen Celebrations. The third principle is that it involves the whole community. NextGen recognizes that health behaviors are limited and shaped by the influences around us. And so in NextGen, we don't just focus on the individual, but parents, teachers, schools, pastors, communities, they are also considered as points for intervention. For example, the program in Mongolia, they conducted meetings, trainings, and events for teachers that run parallel to the events for the youth. 4, NextGen is hands-on and engaging. Most traditional health programs would focus on health lectures, but in NextGen, we want to take it further. Activities must be hands-on, engaging, and immersive. So for example, in Mongolia, yes, they did run discussions, they did have classroom lectures, but they also had activities like hiking clubs and cooking competitions and demonstrations with parents and the youth themselves. And then lastly, NextGen is grounded in scientific evidence. All of this, the flexible approach, the youth training guides, the HCD workshops, they're all packaged into the NextGen implementation toolkit. And the good news is that we've already piloted this approach. We piloted this approach in Mongolia. It's actually ongoing. It started in June 2023 and will last until May 2026. It's implemented by ADRA Mongolia in partnership with the Mongolia Mission of Seventh-day Adventists. It is supported by generous funding from ADRA International, the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, ADRA Austria, and ADRA China Hong Kong. And to ensure that we learn from the experience and that we evaluate the impact and the implementation of NextGen, Loma Linda University School of Public Health is also engaged as the research partner. So today we're excited to share with you a very quick video to show you what this pilot looked like on the ground. It doesn't in any way encompass and capture all the great work that our team in Mongolia has done, but we hope that it gives you an idea of what this looks like in practice.
Энэ клубд явснараа эрүүл хооллолд орсон. Утасны хэрэглээг багасгасан. Өнөөдөр өдөрт баг 8 цаг болчихсон байсан. Тэгээ одоо намайг багассан.
Тэр маш их өөрчлөлт гарч байна. Өнөөдөр жишээ нь одоо мэдрэмжээ шеэрлэгээд байгаа шүү дээ, тэ. А энэнийхээ үр дүнд нэг би охиноосоо миний охин намайг ингээд яаж үнэлтийг би охиноосоо мэдэрч авлаа. Би бас охиндоо сэтгэлийнхаа үгийг хэлэх.
I will now turn over this time to Emily and some of our guests to give a few remarks.
Yes, thank you, Weanne, for sharing that comprehensive overview of NextGen Celebrations as well as the project highlight video. As Weanne just said, we are now going to hear a few special remarks. As mentioned in the introductions, today we have some guests with us that are deeply involved in the Mongolia pilot. Dr. Batsukh, as we'll start with you. As the project manager of the NextGen Celebrations Mongolia project, what was your experience like in implementing this pilot, and what impact did you see or have you seen in the youth? And you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Dr. Batsukh, are you there? Okay, maybe we'll come back to you, Dr. Batsukh. We will transition over to Dr. Baba-Djara. Dr. Baba-Djara, you headed the research component of the Mongolia pilot. Can you tell us a little more about that research design and what results you're expecting to see?
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, so we're very excited to partner with this project and to document some of the work that is being done in the outcomes that we are seeing. One of the issues with doing a research project around a complex multi-layered intervention, especially when you're dealing with behavior change, is that it's very difficult to capture all of that. And you usually cannot do a randomized controlled trial in this specific situation when you are implementing in multiple schools. And so what we decided to do with the team was to take a mixed method. So we are emphasizing qualitative as well as quantitative measures. And we are using a stepwise design, which means that while the project is operating in 4 schools, there are 2 cohorts. So 2 schools have started the intervention, and then the second 2 schools will not start the intervention until the second implementing year, which means that then the first cohort can act as a control or a comparison group. So what we would expect is that from baseline to midline, there would be a change in healthy behaviors and a reduction in risky behaviors in the first cohort, but not in the second cohort, so that the second cohort then can act as a control for us to compare to. And then in the second implementing year, the intervention would continue in cohort number 1, but then also start in cohort number 2. And so then we should see an increase in healthy behaviors and a reduction in healthy or in unhealthy behaviors in the second cohort as well. And if we see that, then that gives us a stronger design than a simply observational research study, which would look at all 4 sites at once. So we're just now finishing up the data collection for the midterm and starting an analysis. So we're excited, hopefully in a month, to have some initial and preliminary results about the changes that we're seeing in the intervention schools versus the non-intervention schools. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baba-Djara, for sharing those insights with us. Dr. Batsukh, I think we have you back on with us. As the project manager of the NextGen Celebrations Mongolia project, what was your experience like? What has it been like in implementing this pilot, and what impact have you seen in youth so far? Okay, I think we're still having a little bit of technical difficulty. We will come back to you again to see if we can get some remarks from you a little bit later. But for the sake of time, let's move on for now. Weanne, back to you to introduce to us the NextGen Celebrations Toolkit.
Thank you, Emily and Dr. Batsukh. Maybe if anyone in the office can be able to share their account with you, in case you're running into any issues with your account, we can do that. But thank you so much, Dr. Baba-Djara, for your comments, and we look forward to hearing from Dr. Batsukh soon. Let me share now what the NextGen Celebrations Toolkit is. We're really excited to see this approach being adopted around the world, and that's why we have created the NextGen Celebrations Toolkit. This is a field-tested practical guide to help ADRA country offices, churches, schools, and other NGOs implement their own NextGen Celebrations program. So let's walk through what's included in this toolkit. The meat or the core of this toolkit is the implementation manual, which guides you through how to set up a NextGen Celebrations program. So let's go through each of the chapters so you have an idea of what's included. So chapter 1 goes into what this toolkit is and how do we use it. Chapter 2 gives you an overview of the NextGen Celebrations program. It goes through the principles that I had discussed earlier, as well as the theoretical foundations of the model, such as the human-centered design, health belief model, and the social ecological model. Chapter 3 is the meat of the implementation guide. It goes through all the different phases for setting up a NextGen Celebrations program. So from pre-implementation planning, training and capacity building, assessments, intervention design and contextualization, pilot, full-scale implementation, and program close-up and scale-up, program closure and scale-up. It gives you the tasks and activities for each. Chapter 4 is for all of our meal folks. This is the chapter that's focused on monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. So it gives the recommended indicators for the program, as well as templates for CAP surveys, barrier analyses, FGD guides, and interview guides. Chapter 5 is all about research. Now, to be clear, research is not a required component of NextGen Celebrations. However, it is important that we help contribute to the evidence base for NCD prevention in youth because it's still a very young field. And so for groups that have the resources as well as the interest to conduct research alongside NextGen Celebrations, this is the chapter for you. It provides information about research designs, research ethics trainings, and IRB approvals. Chapter 6 goes into the all-important question of how do we finance this program? How do we pay for it? So this chapter gives you an estimated budget overview with the categories that you should consider when you budget for the program. And it also provides tips for how to raise funds or how to focus on the most high-impact activities for groups that may not have enough resources to do a big program. Chapter 7 is all about adaptation. It talks about how you can adapt the different celebrations letters. So for example, you want to focus on B, belief, in the celebrations model. So in here, you'll find some guidelines for how you can adapt this if you're working in a secular context versus in a faith-based context. It also gives guidelines on translating materials, as well as how to adapt this program if you want to use it for adults instead of youth. Chapter 8 is about communicating and disseminating. So it gives ideas for how you would communicate and adapt. It also gives you ideas for how you can take pictures and share pictures of adolescents responsibly. It gives you guidelines and ideas for social media. And it gives you ideas for and guidelines for language to use when you're implementing the program. So for example, for mental health, we give guidelines to refrain from using words such as crazy or addicts when talking about mental health. So important guidelines like that. All these chapters are accompanied by templates and tools, such as those you see here. And this is just a very small sampling of the templates and tools you can find in the toolkit. So for example, you can have a stakeholder mapping and engagement template to help you design your stakeholder engagement strategy. There's templates for surveys, such as this youth participation and engagement survey. And we also have what we call a behavioral prioritization matrix to help you decide which celebrations principles you want to prioritize in your program based on things like behavioral need, youth interest, feasibility, stakeholder support, and potential for impact. In addition to the implementation manual, there are also 3 companion resources that come with the toolkit. We have this human-centered design guide. As I mentioned earlier, HCD is an important component of this project. But if you've never done or gone through the human-centered design process before, don't worry. This guide will give you everything you need to conduct a human-centered design workshop. It provides an agenda for the human-centered design workshops. It gives you icebreakers, discussion prompts for each of the celebrations letters, as well as instructions for activities such as journey mapping, role storming, crazy eights, all activities to help you get the youth's feedback and ideas in an engaging and participatory manner. The second companion resource to the toolkit is the Youth Ambassador Training Guide. So this guide is a full curriculum that will help you equip youth to lead the program and engage their communities. So it comes with full facilitator scripts with age-appropriate and clear language, and that is accompanied by slide decks, as well as activity ideas, role plays, and discussion prompts to help make learning engaging and hands-on. These are the modules in the training program that we have for the youth ambassadors. They are Foundations of NCDs, the Celebrations Program, Human-Centered Design, Communication and Facilitation Skills, Ethics of Working with Youth, Advocacy and Youth Voice, Teamwork and Conflict Resolution, Creative Messaging for Health Promotion, and Planning and Running Activities. We also have a bonus module for icebreakers. And so all of these topics are important for helping give the youth confidence and knowledge to participate and lead the program. Each of them is about 60 to 90 minutes long, and we encourage that they go through all of these modules. However, if you have limited time or resources, the core modules are Foundations of NCDs, the Celebrations Program, Human-Centered Design, these three on top, and this one in the middle, the Ethics of Working with Youth module. And then the last companion resource we have are the celebrations activity modules. So for each of the celebrations letters, we have a module for them, and it comes with this. This is what it looks like. This is the one for social support. So as you can see, we provide you with an overview of the health behavior, along with evidence-based highlights supporting that behavior, as well as considerations for youth that you should take into account when you're planning an activity for them. These activity modules are also accompanied by what we call activity menus. So each of the celebrations letters come with an activity menu to help jumpstart your thinking on what kinds of activities to implement for the youth. So if you were listening earlier, we went through the qualities of a NextGen celebrations program. And some of those were, one, it has to influence the different layers of an individual's ecosystem, their parents, their teachers, their communities. And we also said that activities must be engaging. And so this activity menu helps you do just that. So we have activities for each of the different levels of influence: individual, interpersonal, community. And if you go to the next page, there's also ideas for policy activities. And all of these activities are engaging and hands-on. So things like making coping plans, peer support sessions, public awareness campaigns, all to make learning engaging and interactive. But it doesn't just stop there. Each of the activities in this activity menu comes with instructions or a description to help you really fully understand how to implement it. So let's look at this example. This is the activity card for a social support activity, and it acts on the interpersonal level of influence. So it gives you the purpose of the activity, instructions for how it works, sample prompts, if relevant, different ways you can implement this activity. So you can do it as a take-home assignment, part of a family night. You can use it as a digital version. And then also there's ways that you can adapt it depending on your context. So if you're working with oral cultures, different family structures, faith-based settings, shy or reserved youth, or if you're working with a really technology-friendly cohort of youth. And we also tell you why this will work and why it will be helpful for you. Now, it's important to let you know that this activity menu is just to spark ideas, right? It's completely up to you to decide which activities to use based on what's feasible for you and what the youth need. Please do not be limited by the activities that we suggest here. We encourage you to adapt them, or if you can't find anything that works specifically for you and your youth, you can create your own activities. And so that's it. That's a toolkit in a nutshell. But I know that this was a lot of information, and it might still be hard to really visualize what a NextGen Celebrations program will look like. And so I would like to walk you through today of what a NextGen Celebrations program could potentially look like when you apply the toolkit. So let's say you are a church in the Philippines and you want to implement the NextGen Celebrations program. So depending on what resources you have, you might do a full needs assessment using the template that is found in the toolkit. Through the needs assessment, you realize, okay, mental health is a problem. It's a challenge. And so you use the behavioral prioritization matrix in the celebrations toolkit to decide which principles can help you address mental health in your community. And through that matrix, you came up with these three things. You want to act on social support, on optimism, and on exercise, because we know that physical activity is correlated with more positive mental health outcomes. So after identifying these, you train your youth ambassadors using the Youth Ambassador Training Guide. Once they are trained, these youth ambassadors lead your human-centered design workshops. You use the human-centered design guide to come up with the agenda and the activities for this workshop. Now, what do you find out from these workshops? Through these workshops for exercise, you find that there's limited safe space for teens to exercise. The youth suggest, hey, why don't we do a solo movement challenge where every day youth have to perform a challenge that they can do in their own homes, whether that's walking around for 15 minutes or doing jumping jacks for 10 minutes, and then we track that through an activity tracker that we give them. For social support, you find out in the HCD workshops that youth say that while their families care, they don't feel comfortable talking to their parents about their emotional struggles. The youth say, we really need to learn skills. We really need to learn the language to talk to our parents to even open up these conversations. So maybe you need to teach us this. And so you decide, okay, I'll do a communication skills building workshop. And then you also perused through our activity menu and found out about the family connection cards. So you say, hey, why don't we do monthly family nights at church where all the families can come together, we'll break them up by families, and they can have conversations using the family connection cards so they can practice their communication skills. And then for optimism, you find out that sermons and youth programming often focus heavily on sin, guilt, and end times fear, which leaves youth feeling anxious and spiritually discouraged. You look through our activity menu and say, nothing really here addresses this finding. But then the youth suggest, why don't we do a hope in every service policy, where the youth ambassadors will talk to the church leaders and ask them to remind all speakers to have more hope-focused messaging, and for program bulletins to have scriptures about hope printed on them. And so you decide to do all of these activities. Now, these are your activities for your NextGen Celebrations program. Let's see if you meet the principles. Are you using 3 or more celebrations health principles? Yes. Optimism, social support, and exercise. Are you placing youth at the center? Yes, you have youth ambassadors leading the program, and you have youth designing and providing input on the activities through the human-centered design workshops. Are you acting on the youth's entire ecosystem? Yes, you're acting on the individual, interpersonal, and the community and policy level. Are your activities interactive and hands-on? Yes, they all put into practice what they will learn through the things that you tell them. And so congratulations, you now have a NextGen Celebrations program, and you can use the rest of the implementation manual to carry out your activity. I also want to clarify here that, as you can see here, these activities do not necessarily require a lot of resources, and you can scale up or scale down based on how many resources you have. You might do a full-on health club that meets every week to conduct these activities, or you can just scale down the frequency of your meetings and your activities. You can also add more activities if you have the budget to do so, to increase the activities that youth participate in. And so this is what your NextGen Celebrations program would look like in real life. And so that's it. That's the toolkit. Before I end, I want to say that it is our hope that what you've seen here is that NextGen Celebrations isn't just a document, it's our invitation. It's an invitation to engage youth in NCD prevention, not just as beneficiaries, but also as equal partners. And it is an invitation to build programs that are evidence-informed, adaptable, and grounded in local voices. And it is our hope that this toolkit will give you the structure and support you need to do just that. So thank you very much, and we're excited to see how you bring NextGen celebrations to life in your own communities.
Thank you so much for that, Weanne. That was a great introduction to the toolkit, and I know this will be a wonderful resource for so many of our listeners. And I'm personally very excited about this and the potential it has for future NCD programming with youth. Dr. Batsukh, I see that you are here and that your mic is enabled now. So if you are able, please do share with us a few minutes of your thoughts and your experience on implementing this in Mongolia.
Good evening, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Because my the technical problem here, I'm sorry. First of all, on behalf of NextGen Celebrations Mongolia project team, I want to extend my deepest thanks for the ADRA colleagues. And as you know, according to WHO's study, Mongolia has one of the highest mortality rates to NCD in Western Asia. After the implementation, NextGen Celebrations project is we are so happy for the implementation project period, because right now in Mongolia only one project implementing for adolescents from 12 to 15 years adolescents lifestyle. But today I would like to mention only three specification for the all of you, because Mongolia with the only 3.5 million population, from them is over the 60% the youth, the young people. Therefore, adolescents shall be grow healthy physically, spiritually, and physically. That's why the project is really important in the future for Mongolian adolescents and in the Mongolian future. Second, in Mongolia, also everywhere, it's the same mental health issue. It's rising by the year. That's why the project is a really good influence for the community, including the teachers and parents and adolescents. For example, we are selected for school, and those two schools, the whole community, including the teacher and parents, really happy and really enjoy it for this project. That's why it's a really important, especially mental health issue for the adolescents, also the teachers. And third, it's as you know, is currently adolescents are challenging with the so many information from the online, from parents and from the teachers, very different information they're receiving, but they don't have any the document-based, science-based documentation. They don't have. That's why our baseline, midline is all the results shown the parents, teachers, all the adolescents, the reduce the NCD risk and also in the future. And lastly, I would like to express my deeply gratitude for the all technical advisor of the ADRA. Also, the implementation of the project is really successful in Mongolia. Only one request from those two schools. First, this year we finished only two schools. Those two schools, all the students and most of teachers really wanted to continue the health club. It's the really good news from those two schools. That's why in Mongolia, we are so happy to implement this project, and also all adolescents really wanted to continue health club and also all the set celebrations, all tools and the settings program. Thank you again for all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Batsukh. It sounds like this project is very, very relevant for youth in the Mongolia context. And we thank you so much for the work you're doing there and for sharing your experience. Now, Dr. Charles-Marcel, moving to you for some remarks. As the Director for Health Ministries at the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, where the principles of this entire celebrations model were created, what are your thoughts on the lasting change that we could see if a global adoption and application of this celebrations approach were to take place?
Well, thank you very much for the question, and good day, good evening, good night to all who are participating. Well, that would be utopia, to have communities all over the world actually engaging in something like the celebrations approach and others that might be similar. And this one in particular is not just some idea that was fabricated out of nothing. We have a history of using these principles to actually engage people in changing not just their health behavior, but also changing their worldview about health. The General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, of course, is very interested in the health and wholeness and wellness that we believe is desired by God for everyone. And so we want everyone to experience this fullness of health and the vibrancy and energy that we typically would apply to youth and young people. With this in mind, one might ask, well, why youth? And youth is what even the older people are looking for, right? We're looking for the founding of youth. And I, by training, I'm a geriatrician, I'm a diabetologist, and deeply involved in lifestyle medicine. And I tell my patients, and I tell their children, that geriatrics actually starts with pediatrics. Okay, what happens in childhood actually affects what's going to happen later on in life. Of course, it's not an inexorable direct cause and effect, but there's enough of that component that if we don't intervene with modifiable tools to change what we're doing, then we have a pretty clear trajectory as to what will happen down the line. The fact that this particular toolkit was developed from the research already in a population that has a high prevalence of NCDs and also a high proportion of youth should help us to be able to apply this anywhere and everywhere. And I don't know where all of the people who are attending this toolkit implementation meeting are from. It'll be good if they would put that in their registration, of course, or even in the chat where they're coming from, because it will be good to see what this will do as they go back and they adopt this and adapt it to their setting, to contextualize it, and to develop something that is based on these principles, but goes beyond into what will be really meaningful for their communities. Now, one more thing I want to point out is that by following some of these principles for young people, it also improves their academic performance, which means it changes the trajectory of their educational pursuits and what they'll be capable of doing later on in life. So it's not just something that is going to reduce the burden of disease, but it also helps individuals to then flourish in other aspects of life that we pray will be helpful for them and for their societies. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks, Dr. Charles-Marcel. And thank you so much to all of our speakers for the insightful presentation, as well as the experiences and thoughts shared. For time's sake, I would like to move us directly into our Q&A. We have received a few questions, and I want to get us started on a rather simple question, but maybe it's a complicated answer. Is there any evidence of impact about the incidence of NCDs after implementing this toolkit among the schoolgoers?
I can provide a brief answer, but then probably Dr. Baba-Djara can respond to this. But this is something that we're currently working on through the research component of the project that is led by Loma Linda University. And so I'll pass this on to you, Dr. Baba-Djara.
Thank you, Weanne. So several points, and this is an excellent question. I think this is the most challenging thing to document in terms of interventions related to lifestyle changes that then contribute to reduction in incidence of NCDs. As we know, and as you've seen from Weanne's presentation, what we are working on is far upstream from the actual NCD itself developing. And so making a direct correlation between the impact of the program to NCD incidents is challenging. The second thing, that this is a pilot program. So the body of evidence, while there is evidence in the individual behavior changes that the program promotes, and that's well documented. Putting it together in a program like this with multiple layers of intervention, again, becomes challenging to look at contribution in terms of what contributes to changes in NCD incidents. I think in order to have rigorous evidence on the impact of this program on the incidence of NCD, we would have to have a much larger cohort of an intervention. Since this is mostly a pilot program, this particular program will not be producing that level of evidence.
May I make one comment as well? Yes. As Dr. Baba-Djara mentioned, the elements that comprise celebrations, each one has been studied already. So individually, we know that people who adopt each one of these or any one of these, it will make a difference in the long-term development of non-communicable diseases. So that is already a given. This particular package and using this approach with youth, this is the novel approach that we're using here, and we believe that it has all of the elements or most of the elements that should bring a resounding success. But we'll have to wait several years to be able to see how this actually plays out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for Q&A. We will answer the rest of your questions and send in the answers in our follow-up email. So please do feel free to continue posting questions if you have them, and we will get to them and provide those answers to you, our participants. But thank you so much for the questions that have come in. I want to now hand it over to Dr. Josue Orellana, our Director of Health, Nutrition, and WASH at ADRA International, who is serving as Program Manager for the Mongolia project, to provide us with a final call to action before we close. Dr. Orellana, over to you.
Thank you, and hello to everyone. I want to appreciate all the speakers, and especially Weanne. Thank you for introducing us to this toolkit. As probably we all know by now, and this is no secret, and it has been formally stated by the World Health Organization, NCDs worldwide are just going rampant. They have become a new silent growing global health threat. And they silently keep growing and growing and growing, but we can no longer continue to ignore them. Right now, as we speak, the nearly 3/4 of all global NCD deaths are happening in low and middle income countries. So it's no longer an issue of developed nations alone. Now, one of the best ways to tackle NCDs is through lifestyle interventions, because you can prevent and you can reverse the cause of disease by doing that. But this is nothing new. back in 1903, Thomas Alva Edison famously stated, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but will interest his patient in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease." But as we speak about lifestyle, I want to encourage all of us to please use evidence-based interventions. If you Google lifestyle suggestions, ideas, go to YouTube and you will find all sorts of wannabe doctors there who suggest all sorts of diets and things. But please use evidence-based interventions as you do it. As stated by Weanne during the presentation, we continue to design the NextGen Celebrations approach using data from the Mongolia pilot project. And we expect to have the final version of it in 2026. But an early version of the toolkit will be available within a few weeks once graphic design is completed. If you want to access this document, please use the form that we will provide to you. And you see that in the chat right now. Fill that form, and or you can scan the QR code as well. So we will have your contact information and we can get back to you with the document as soon as it is completed. And we also want to stay in touch with you. We want to see how you are doing. We want to continue to learn and continue to feed the toolkit with information and continue to improve it. So we wish you all the best in your efforts to combat NCDs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Orellana. And on that note, we are just past the hour. Thanks again to all of our other presenters, as well as to all of you who have attended our event today. We do hope you have gained some insightful learnings. In the coming days, you will receive an email with a recording of today's webinar, as well as a satisfaction survey and other relevant resources, including responses to the questions we are not able to get to today. So please do be on the lookout for that. And with that, I would like to thank you once again for your participation and wish you a very warm farewell for the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be. Goodbye, everyone.